Hey everyone, J-Rob Plays here, and today I'm be bringing you a video about how we're going to fix Destiny Rising going forward. These are going to just be from the ideas of the community, creators, and people in the comments, things like that, that have stood out to me, and other ideas also that I've come up on my own that also kind of echo what people have been saying in the greater community as a whole. And it's important to get these kind of videos out there and get them out there early in the development cycle of a game, because there's development delays going on, and with so many upcoming games releasing that's going to take players away in the short term from Destiny Rising and other games, we want to make sure that there's a strong, consistent push happening soon from the developers at NetEase for Destiny Rising. Because again, games like Battlefield are just around the corner on October 10th, and that game for sure is going to make an impact on our player base. So again, we have to make sure that we address a lot of these concerns, or at least get it out there publicly that we are going to address these concerns as a community, and the developers have heard us and they're taking our complaints and our feedback seriously. And right now, we'll start with the biggest complaint, and that's going to be resource bottlenecks. So the game needs more renewable resources to keep the game fresh, and also to prevent burnout from running into walls that force players into kind of like a waiting game. In the other video, I made a joke about Waitgate from Destiny 2, W-E-I-G-H-T, and in this game, we have Waitgate, W-A-I-T, Waitgate, which is basically a situation where the Pinnacle energy system is forcing players to wait to play the game, and they want to play more, but there's really not a whole lot of rewards that you get from playing without Pinnacle energy that are substantial. Like, you can grind some small things, but it's just not as enjoyable as when you're actually getting actual real progress, and that only happens for a short period of time each day. And with that waiting game, that can lead players to becoming a little bit apathetic about the game, and then just not enjoying the game at all as a whole, and then leaving the game. So elemental fruits, all the clusters, exotic mods, especially the ones that don't match your weapon perks, and exotic artifacts, those are all sticking points for players right now. Unless the devs do something about these resource walls, which are preventing players from playing the game the way that they want to their heart's content, we're going to continue to bleed players. And speaking of players, that brings me to my first topic, and that's going to be choosing an identity. And so this is something that I've seen talked about a lot recently, and it seems to be a consensus among Destiny creators that Destiny Rising needs to choose a path soon, a sort of a gambit to save the game from falling out of relevance. And by choosing a core audience, they can mold the game to that game's audience habits, and staying the course on that choice to see it to its end is supposed to help save the game in the long run. Now, I totally get the sentiment. I understand where the thought is coming from, too. The marketing leaders seem to have tried straddling two separate communities with Destiny Rising, bringing the gacha elements and the looter-shooter DNA together. This has led to a situation where both groups of players that they're trying to bring in are somewhat dissatisfied with the game, because it's kind of like you're trying to satisfy everybody, so nobody's happy. And I don't play gacha games, and I've never played this. This is my first time ever engaging with a gacha game, and I engage with this one solely because it's a Destiny game. But from what I've seen and what I've heard, gacha players tend to gravitate more towards like anime waifu-style games and stories that follow normal anime tropes, and there seems to be less interest in the more realistic player models of Destiny Rising, even though for the most part the characters are conventionally attractive. Gwen even has her goth mommy appeal. It only went so far to gain the interest of some of those players. NetEase also didn't really include many of the larger gacha creators in the initial marketing push, and instead chose to focus mainly on Destiny 2 creators and some shooter adjacent creators, all the way through to the end of the Eclipse raid race event. And so far, that's been the only push that I've seen initially. I haven't really seen a whole lot since then, so there may be more coming soon. We're just not aware of it. We haven't been told about it as creators, as official creators. This is basically all they've done, and there's no word on if they're going to be doing more or how they're going to be doing it. So we have a lack of a roadmap as well. Now, again, if you want Destiny 2 players to stick with this game, you're going to have to let them grind to their heart's content, because they will. And you also have to give them ample amounts of attractive cosmetics in the store to keep them interested, by giving them a way to customize their units and making them feel connected to them. Right now, the cosmetics are just okay, and you can see exactly what I mean if you come into the store here and you go down to the cosmetic sections. You have your initial cosmetics that do look okay, but these are going to be the ones that cost silver. And then as you go through, you'll see that there's some that have silver, but there's also some, confusingly, that have this other type of resource called bright pigment that nobody really knows what to do with, because it's not quite like bright dust, and you have to have owned the original to try to use this, and it's sometimes applies and sometimes doesn't, like the decal system. I don't even want to really get too deep in the decal system. I think they should scrap the decal system entirely and replace it with the shader system. Reason being is that what exists right now is already basically shaders. If you go into the section where you can buy things for actual bright dust, and you come down here to the bottom, you'll see that really these are not super different. They're basically the same things, weapons and armor that we already have, that are just shaded. And when you look at some of the outfits that are going to be available also for bright dust, same thing. They're the same exact outfits, they're just different colors. So if you were to scrap the decal system in favor of shader system, and then wrap the decals into that since they're already in the game, maybe that would fix it. But again, the decals are not well done. They have the ability to phase in and out of your clothing, but when they do so, they kind of clip through the clothing and they don't land right, so the transparency on them is really bad. Just overall a rough system. Maybe if enough stuff gets added into it, I'll go into it further, but I hope again they just kind of get rid of that altogether. But getting back to the issue of courting an audience, another major issue with courting the Destiny 2 community itself is that Bungie's done such a poor job with the game overall that many of the players are just done with Destiny as a whole, and they've either moved on to another game or they just stopped playing the game entirely. A large part of the player base itself started over a decade ago, and a lot of them have aged out just due to personal responsibilities. Those are reducing the time they have to even play the game any longer, and they're not going to play a game they don't find fun anymore. So speaking of Bungie and D2, this brings it to my next point. NetEase needs to persuade Sony to allow Destiny Rising to launch on console and PC officially, even if it means having separate servers for mobile players to maintain like a fair play and balanced gaming environment for those players. You're going to need that additional player base and that additional access to the game if you want to survive long term. It's already such a big game right now as it is being Destiny 2. If you were to be able to get on these stores, Xbox and Sony store, another game that's free to play, that has access to it, that you can just buy into if you want to buy these transactions that you can actually play and try, a lot of players will download and play the game. And even if they're just free to play players, those players are obviously going to keep the larger spending players here because they need a larger player population, and those players may eventually sign up for the cheaper bundles like the Pandora bundle or just like the $5 Blessing bundle just to kind of support the game or to get a little few things here and there that they need. And of course, back to the cosmetics, if they had really nice cosmetics, they'd be buying those too, and that would be their major spend. Another thing you should do if you're going to be going after Destiny 2 players is that NetEase and Bungie should find a way to connect these two games in a gameplay loop so that playing Destiny 2 gives you rewards for Destiny Rising and vice versa. If that were possible, right now, for example, the pack hunt gameplay is very simple and still fun to interact with. You could make a similar interface in Destiny 2 that allows for some type of connected gameplay using that type of a system, even if it's very simple, that allows you to interact with your Destiny Rising account and get rewards there, and then vice versa. And it's easy to take care of, and it keeps the load low on both games. Now, speaking of content and the load that it takes on games, right now with the current content on Destiny Rising, the game really needs to have more regular events to make each activity relevant for that week, and with sufficient rewards for the time invested. Players need to feel that FOMO and they need to participate because the event is offering rewards that are just so good that you really can't miss out. And right now, for example, I hardly even play Legacy unless I need more sheaths than what's currently available through the exchanges. Shifting gates in the pack hunt, they have a decent supply for me, so when I do need more, I usually end up just getting into Iron Commander and sending a group to go grab them for me with that bonus chance to get additional rewards. So an event where they mix up enemy encounters or juice up the rewards, they create some type of timed Legacy rush similar to Morgan's Hunt, but like in the Legacy playlist. Anything to spice that playlist up, that'll keep players in that playlist and keep that activity useful, because otherwise it's just kind of sitting there now that people have kind of outgrown a lot of the units need for sheaths from that activity. And then you can rotate to Strike Week, and then you can go give campaign bonuses one week. You can follow it up with another raid event, even if it's the same encounters, but just something that has additional rewards on top of it or some different twist on the encounter, however you want to do that. But that should carry the game at least through to the next season and in the next content drop. And if they follow that same cadence, that should be just enough to keep people busy to playing a few hours a day, because that's all you really need to encourage somebody to be a long-time customer. You create habits and then you create spend, and that's what they need right now is players who are going to spend, and also players to play the game in general. Now, another question out there that I've seen is that does the game need more gear, such as like an exotic armor piece that augments character abilities, that does something different for each character when you equip it, or even more various types of weapons for each unit? I for sure would like to have more mythic weapons with like additional elements added onto characters that are underwhelming, like Atal, for example. If she had more linears to choose from, which would also then translate over to Hellhest, they would be a little more viable in content because it didn't matter what the shields are, they can still contribute. And this additional versatility should kind of keep them useful in most activities. Even if it's not like the super in-game stuff, they're still fun to play because they're not limited, or they don't take quite as long in certain things like a Calamity Ops or a Grandmaster, because you're having to plink away at a shield that you don't have an answer for. Speaking of characters that are mismatched for the activity, you could also adjust character abilities that could be changed to affect Shinka shields to add more versatility at the high end. This is going to be similar to how verbs work right now in Destiny 2, meaning that certain abilities or even elements of abilities will have an effect on a Shinka shield, allowing characters that don't specifically have weapons for that type of Shinka to still bring down their shield or contribute to bringing down their shield. And this again will also include them more in activities where their weapon types are not matching the Shinkas, but they can still be useful in helping to bring down a shield. So like imagine again the underpowered character Atal, an arc attack on her side ends up doing a chunk of damage to an impact Shinka, she can get in there with her heal over time, throw the arc attack into the impact Shinka, and that'll weaken it for the Gwen or the Yoder, who can come in and just hit it one time, saving ammo and still being useful in the fight. So again, that additional versatility is going to make each character more useful, so people can get attached to characters more than their weapon types. Now, speaking of elements, exotic artifacts right now, they actually need more justification to be locked to a certain element type. That's too restrictive. They need to have some type of bonus, or even like a set bonus, that adds to a character's ability when equipping those element locked artifacts. This will give players even more incentive to run these over like a god roll mythic artifact with better stat bonuses in areas that affect character performance, because now you have these additional bonuses that are a side bonus, so they're not necessarily as good in the specific stat or type of stat that you have, but when you do the bonuses together, there will be something equivalent on that side for running these 4 element locked artifacts, because again, right now you have all this investment and all this time into these element lock artifacts, and they can only be shared between a few characters, and it really slows the game down, it slows progress down. And maybe that's the point that the person who thought of this process originally designed it as, but it's become a sticking point. It's also probably going to lead to like a reduced interest in player base in the future for people who just get tired of having to grind and grind and grind, and they're spending all their pinnacle power, but they're not getting their artifacts. And then if they do get their artifact, they get it from a run where they were spending no energy and they were just trying to get basic rewards. Those particular artifacts drop at a lower overall attribute base, so in general they're going to cost more later on to upgrade those. It's good to have that power increase and power boost for things like the acclaim system, but when it comes to actually usability long term, those are really going to hurt the player having to rely on that as their artifact and not having that pinnacle power, again coming back to pinnacle power, to get the other artifacts that are going to have the higher end drops that take less resources to get them where you need them to get. Now, speaking of god rolls, when it comes to the mythic artifacts, let's talk a little bit about god rolls and weapons. So we definitely need to do something about the mod system as it currently is. It's incredibly rare to get a mod at all in the game, considering the limitation on the keys. Then you have the low drop rates on top of that. Then again, you have the low chance of even getting a mod that matches the perk it's designed for, matching the perk on your favorite weapon. So there's just too much levels of RNG there, and it's just not fun. There's no deterministic way to say, if I do this enough times, I'm going to get this particular mod that's going to match this weapon if I take enough time. A lot of players responded well to an activity like the Menagerie, for example, which I'll mention later on probably, and that Menagerie was great because two things. You had a really rewarding experience because of a bug where you could run back and forth to get the chest over and over again, which limited your time. This is very similar right now to where we can get double the chests by spinning our little catalysts. And then you had on top of that a system that you could go into, and you already have kind of the bones for that with our artifact right now, for example, with a system that looks like that, and you can choose what you're trying to farm for, and that increases the drop chance for the item that you get when you do get the drop to have what you're looking for. So we could have a system where we choose a rapid fire mod with this particular perk, so that when we do get a rapid fire mod, it's got a much higher chance, or a guaranteed chance, as low as these are, to get that exact perk, so that I can put that on the weapon that has the perk that I'm using. And the reason that's actually important too, not a lot of people know this as well, is that when you have a matching perk on an exotic mod to the perk on your mythic weapon, and they line up, it gives you a power boost. And I'll show you that here. So for example, I go under Wolf and I click on his guns here, you'll see that these perks that I have do not match at all. This is Disturbance, Annihilation, and Syncopation. They do not match at all. So they're 800, 800, and 250. But if I come over to a different unit that does have matching perks, which is Ningfei, and I have a situation where I have a perk Hyperamia that's matched to this perk, now you look at it and it's not 800, it's 960. On top of that, I have Synesthesia matched here, and Synesthesia is not 250, it's 410. And so this Ningfei unit, as you can see here, is getting an additional 160 power from these matching benefits just for having the right perk matching, not additional spend or anything else like that. Again, if I go over to my Wolf and I look at my rifle, as you can see, none of these match, but I've maxed them all out just for the power bonus purposes, which is what we're forced to do as top-end players trying to kind of compete for the best. You're just going to have to spend your resources as you get them. It's rare to get a mod as it is. You might as well stick them in there and use them. Wolf is one of my 3 units in my main roster, so I spent them on him, and so now I have all of these wasted, essentially, resources for now until I can get mods that match some of the perks. But furthermore, even hurting this system is the fact that certain perks don't even exist on mods. So right now, if I go into the depleted uranium ammo and I go to equip other mods, and I come down here and I can choose this mod that shows the random perk upgrades. You can see that it rolls syncopation, glutton, hyperamia, and ensuring yields, which some of these are fine for my Ningfei, but here, my favorite weapon that I'm using right now, because this burns down Shinka shields faster on rapid fire Shinkas, as time marches on, I'll never get that boost on this gun, because right now in the game, they don't have these mods available with this perk. Now, they may be holding them back, they may be adding them later on, but that doesn't help us right now, and again, we need to make the changes that make a difference right now to gain players and retain players, not in the future. It's all well and good that you have these intentions to bring them in the future, but unless you start doing these things soon, and I'm talking within the next season, or even half season, you're going to have players that get tired of this system and are upset that they had a mod that they put on, they realize that it's wasted, that another character could have used it. Like some of these mods I could have put on Ningfei, for example, and not even wasted them on Wolf. If I had more mods and I had more chances and we had a better system of getting these mods, then I wouldn't have had to waste so many resources just to get Wolf to a place where I could do the Calamity Ops that I was doing with him at the time, which I'm now then spending on Ningfei. And again, I don't understand the reasoning behind the way that this is set up, as far as mods not even having certain perks on them at all. I'm sure that it's probably for balance purposes if it is intentional, but if it's just an oversight and the devs know that, again, that more are stuff coming in the future, they're like, oh, we'll add it later. I don't think they have that kind of development runway time, because again, it takes time to implement changes in a live game with minimal bugs. And when you have a situation where players can use up all their keys for each week and not even get a single mod to drop, that means that they're just done for that week. Like, pack it in, try again after reset, we'll play again later. Like, they may just give up on the game, period, and they just drop off. They play less and less until they don't play at all. And so again, we're talking player retention, we're talking putting in systems that reward players for their efforts and give them the ability to even put those efforts out in the first place without limitations. Now, again, speaking about putting in the game better rewards for our efforts, NetEase also needs to make the harder and high-end content more rewarding. So GMs and raids, for example, they need to drop either more loot compared to like a Calamity Ops or a Master Ops, or they need to drop additional in-game resources like fruit or some of the clusters that are only available in modes like Calamity Ops at some of the higher-end levels. Even if you put like a limit on it that, you know, you have those 3 weekly Pinnacle spins that give you those weekly bonuses, even if you need to put those between those weekly only to balance it out, they still need to be in the high-end content, because currently, once you get your keys done, there's no reason to run GMs. And for raids, once you've spent your Pinnacle Power for your weekly spin and you've gotten your exotic weapon that you're trying to farm, there's really not a big reason to go back into the raids. And again, these are 6-player activities, and having less and less players doing them toward the end of the week means they're going to be harder to get done for people who try to play this game on the weekend. In the game, the way its reset cycle is not exactly super friendly for weekend players, because a lot of the players, if they start playing this game early Monday, are done with a lot of their weekly spin, and they're not going to have that available during the weekend. The end game also needs to be sped up a bit, or should I say the resource payout side of the end game. Calamity Ops and the Expanse, for example, they should reset every week instead of every 2 weeks. This could also alleviate some of the pain that players are having when it comes to getting resources. Even if you need to adjust the amount of resources the activity provides to balance it out, this is similar to people who prefer, for example, getting their paychecks every week instead of every 2 weeks or just once a month. By speeding up that payout, it gives you that additional dopamine rush of getting your good resources more often. This should at least somewhat increase player sentiment overall as a result and keep people engaged in the game more often. Now, speaking of Calamity Ops, I tend to save this one for some of the last talking points because it's basically like Destiny Endgame. I covered it in my recent video about the Endgame because it needs improvement to be sustainable long-term, I think. Currently, Calamity Ops suffers from similar issues as the recent Top 100 raid race did, in that the time for the event was too long, and it allowed teams just to keep shaving off time off their runs, which made it more difficult for other people to place in general in that Top 100, and that does the same thing to players currently in the promotion or the regulation zones of Calamity Ops. So just like I mentioned, doing a daily reset of the leaderboards for the raid event in my past video, you can also shorten the reset time as well, and that would leave less time for this issue of players iterating over and over again and forcing people further down the ladder to present itself, and people's original runs will have a better chance at sticking. So you could do it twice a week, you could do it once a week, just like a normal reset like we talked about, move everything to once a week. So now instead of players having 2 weeks to learn the strike and to really just get better and to learn all the cheeses, because again, currently right now in the Foundry, players are dying on purpose to be pulled ahead to another section. I've even seen a match-made team find a way to breach the starting barrier, and by the time I was sitting there waiting on my Sparrow to actually engage, they were already up and fighting the enemies, and then the wall dropped down because the first few enemies were killed, which shaved off maybe about, 10-15 seconds, but those seconds matter in the end. And then you have, again, teams that have a bunch of movement players that are basically slingshotting off each other when it comes to being pulled, because they're good enough to kind of two-man things that people are three-manning currently, and those are leading to those really higher-end scores and those higher-end runs with those cheeses and those those glitches and those, not necessarily exploits, I don't want to go that far, but it's things that players have that are privileged with that knowledge as an advantage that are obviously not going to share with others until it's too late in the week or in the next week. Players will put out a video saying this was my world record run for this week, the week after, and it's no longer available. And other players can't even compete with that. They don't know about that or don't know how to get that information. So again, having a shorter time for those things to be discovered and then having those things rotate more often will lead to a little bit less of that too, leading to a little bit more of a fair, balanced ladder between the players. And speaking of the ladder, right now you're almost incentivized to not play Calamity Ops much until like 3, maybe 4 days before reset. Maybe even closer if you're really trying to squeak in, because each clear that you post, it's going to give another player their target to reach to push you down the leaderboard and take your place in the zone. So again, for players who didn't watch my last video on the Endgame, you can see here that I'm currently stuck in Zone 3, and this is going to be a zone of random players that get stuck with me at the beginning of the week, at the beginning of the 2-week, should I say, cycle. And these players and I are going to compete over and over again. And as you can see here, I was in the promotion zone. I was just inside of the promotion zone by about 3 places, and now I am 1 place back into the unchanged zone. And I'm only there by, what, 60 points? Let's take a look. Let's see. Yep, 60 points. So 60 points, 1 additional mob killed at the very end of the strike is what's going to possibly prevent me from getting the additional awards next week, moving up into Master 1, and not only getting the 5 incandescence clusters, but also 35 possible weapon infusion cores, or 30, and these additional 2 incandescence clusters, and these additional 20 weapon cores that I would get if I were to be further up in here. Now, of course, I still have 4 days left. With a day or 2 left, I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to find a good team, and I'm going to knock it out, either getting in the promotion to the next one, and then placing again, or just getting high in the promotion zone to where I know that I'm good for the next day. But the point is that if this was reset already, if I didn't have to sit and wait when I was in the promotion zone for me to go back into the Unchange zone for a few days, those players wouldn't have even had time to catch my score. I would have already been reset, moved into the other zone, gotten my rewards, and we would already be cycling through another set of rewards. Not a problem from there. And the way that the system is set up, the majority of players are going to feel like they're losing at the mode because of its design. And many of those players are solo players whose only way that they're interacting with this is through matchmaking. Now, this can be fixed by adding a score boost for solo matchmade players, or by separating the ladders between pre-made teams and matchmade teams, therefore making it fair for those people who are matchmaking because they're only going against matchmaking, and the people who are pre-made because they're only going against pre-made teams. This mode has a lot of similar shortfalls and struggles as the Trials of Osiris in Destiny 2, for example, when you're pitting sweats versus casuals, and it should be balanced or frequently adjusted the same way to keep players actively in the playlist. Because again, if you're going to allow the higher end players to constantly beat down on the casual players are going to stop at some point engaging with the system, and then they're just going to be only high level players engaging with each other. It's going to be really sweaty, and the people who are at the top are going to be somewhat okay until they start having to play against the same people over and over again, and they just get burnt out. We're already dealing with super long wait times for shifting gates on the upper end of the NA server, for example. I can only imagine how bad it is on some of the less populated servers. We're almost at a point where NetEase should be asking itself if it should merge the less populated servers into the larger ones so those modes can stay active and players don't just entirely abandon them, period. Because again, that happens in trials right now, where if it gets too sweaty, players stop playing, and then you get guys like Grenadier Jake, who are normally very wholesome and have a good show that they put on, and they're very friendly, just reduced to nonstop complaining about having to play the same players, or getting stream sniped so often, or running into a bunch of cheaters. And again, these are symptoms that can be easily alleviated by having a larger player base, because when you have a larger pool of players, you have the less chance of running into those. The odds of you getting stream sniped are a lot less. The odds of running into cheaters get diluted. And of course, having a good cheat system too helps with that, but that's something that Destiny just can't do, apparently. But with Destiny Rising, that can be changed. But I want to make sure that NetEase knows that they see this, that they have to make sure that they're not just holding on to some of the most popular characters for certain points in the content drops, because if they wait too long, characters like Cade 6, Shin Malphur with his last word, Razor Lazier with the Rose, later to be known as Dredgen Yor with his corrupted thorn, Zavala and Shaxx in their warlord forms, if they hold on to those characters for too long, players are not even going to be around to see them. So I think that they should try to aim to release one of these characters with greater name recognition at least once per quarter. I guess that's once per season, until the player base noticeably improves and stabilizes. That way you know you've brought in people, they've already again built their habits, and they're playing the game long term, and they're going to play those characters that they've invested in long term. Now, lastly, I want to touch on Pinnacle Power one more time, because overall players are not happy with it in general. If you ask anyone, there's always going to be some feedback as to how the system can improve. No one is completely happy with it. And NetEase can easily just raise the daily cap, for example, from 120 Pinnacle Power all the way to 360. This is going to allow for more gameplay each day, and it's also going to encourage players to log in daily, because if they don't, that extra energy over 360 is going to be wasted. So at least they'll log in and spend some energy each day so that they get some energy back each day. And if they don't want to go that route, they can also give spenders more value in what they're already spending. So for example, the Pandora deal right now, because energy, they can triple that energy, they can double that energy, they can just do something to encourage players to spend. They could even add Pinnacle energy into the Light's Blessing, into the Battle Pass, into the different founder style bundles that are currently down the pipe. The players that invest in those things will feel like they're getting a good return on their investment, because not only are they getting whatever the cosmetics are and a few of the little resources, but they're also getting more time to play the game. And so it makes them feel like they're subscribing to the game appropriately and not subscribing to something that will then expire, like a chat frame, for example. That was kind of like a rug pull for a lot of people who thought that they were going to have a founder chat frame forever and stand out, only to find out it was for 30 days or something like that, and you need to buy a new founder subscription to get a new founders chat frame. Like little stuff like that turn people off, and it's really super avoidable. Like that was like an easily avoidable self-inflicted wound. Like somebody somewhere at the company should have been like, the chat frames expire, that's lame. Like, you know what I mean? Like you would think that feedback would just get up immediately to the person who said, why don't we just expire the chat frames so they can buy more? I think it's just a little bit of that cognitive dissonance and that disconnect between people who are thinking about a gacha game and people who are thinking about a Destiny fan base, because they don't really understand the people that they're courting. And if they have a bunch of money still left, if they have a bunch of investment, they really need to start hiring people to consult with so that they understand the fan base that they currently have. And I think they really should put out a lot of surveys that get a good idea on who the fans that are playing their game actually are, and that's going to help them really crystallize who they're catering to. Because again, Destiny players are grinders, and we enjoy being rewarded for our efforts in loot, feeling more powerful, being able to take on harder content. And even the sweats who enjoy competing at the high end will get bored of competing at the high end unless NetEase finds a way to shake up the meta and change what it means to be a top player. Because right now, if you're going to have these speedrunners running everything, then they're going to continue to do so until they get bored of just speedrunning the same things over again. But if you change the meta to where you have good raiders, for example, people who complete puzzles, or people who are good at problem solving in different ways, chances to shine, people with those different talents, those high-end players who are not necessarily speedrunners, but are definitely very competent and strong when it comes to execution and executing mechanics, if you give those players a chance to shine in some type of a leaderboard for those players, then I think that will then challenge the speedrunners to be better in execution as well, instead of just iterating over and over and over again on the same thing. And that will give people a chance to learn puzzles that aren't necessarily puzzle solvers. It'll give the community a chance to join together and create alternate websites like Destiny did with the chess event, where we got together and we were able to create a website to validate each of the chess boards to come together to create a solution for that. Like if you can find ways to incorporate those things and in those players, giving more people more versatility in how they interact with the game, that's going to keep things fresh. Now, again, these are just some of the ideas that I and other creators have been putting out there with the hopes that anyone at NetEase is actually looking for and looking at this valuable feedback to improve the game. We can only hope that they see the mistakes that Bungie made at a high level and avoid repeating Destiny history. Again, I make these videos because I really enjoy Destiny Rising, and I want it to be the best game it possibly can, not only for me, but for every Guardian out there, future and past, who felt that initial addictive magic that was the first time they really played Destiny. Whether it be Destiny 1 with the Wizard on the Moon, or Destiny 2 facing down the Witness in Salvation's Edge, whatever that moment was that hooked you, it can still exist here for those players in Destiny Rising if the devs capitalize on the opportunity to show Bungie how to make a proper Destiny game. And I want to make it clear that that magic of Destiny and Destiny Universe is still out there, waiting for returning players and new Guardians just the same. So this will likely not be my last video of this type based on what I'm seeing so far from the game, but I hope that this is kind of the calm before a content storm that will come and invigorate this game and lead to a strong, happy player base who will enjoy this game for years to come. Now, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, I want to thank you for watching in its entirety. I really do appreciate all my dedicated viewers, and of course, there's plenty of Destiny 2 and Destiny Rising content coming, so until they shut down the servers on both games, I'll see you all in the next video.